Hello there, people of the internet. Shout out to GOA and FPC. We need them right now more than we ever have in our history, with some very few exceptions. I've had a couple of people ask me to explain the differences between light bullets, heavy bullets, the pros and cons between the two. Typically these are like newer shooters. These are people that are looking to get themselves something, but they don't necessarily know what they want. And they're just basically asking for my opinion and for me to elaborate on the different types of calibers, projectiles, grain weights, etc., that they are taking into considerations. And I figured I'd go ahead and make a full-on video on this because it might help some people out who are maybe in the same ballpark. So today's topic, we are going to go ahead and talk about a topic that is like It's a topic that has had people butting heads for a very long time now. We're going to talk about 7.62x39 versus 223/5.56. You know, pick your poison on that. These are both tool rounds. We're going to be firing them out of a SKS. This is a 1953 production Tula-made SKS, and this right here is my 1980s production Ruger Mini 14, chambered in 223/5.56. This one right here is chambered in 7.62x39, and they're going to serve our purposes very well. But before we go running them, let's go ahead and start talking about this. Alright. Pros of a heavier bullet: you're going to have more power downrange whenever you actually hit your target. With some exception, we'll get into that here in a little while, but as a general idea, the heavier the bullet, the more power you're going to have whenever it reaches its target. Heavier bullets are easier to suppress because they're typically traveling slower. Your lighter bullets get their ballistic capabilities from a much higher velocity than your heavier rounds. Whenever they hit the targets, their damage coefficients, their ability to transfer energy onto target is not derivative based off the bullet weight, but rather the velocity in which it travels. It is easier to push a lighter, smaller bullet than it is to push a larger, heavier one. I mean, think about if you had, you know, a little pebble in your hand and you were to huck that thing as hard as you could. It would travel much faster than it would if you were to have like a cinder block in your hand and huck that thing as hard as you could. However, whenever the cinder block made impact on target, the cinder block would do way more damage than that little pebble that you would have in your hand. Now, thinking about that logic, you would be able to huck that pebble farther than you would be able to huck that cinder block. Generally speaking, if you have a lighter projectile and a heavier projectile, there are some exceptions depending on like how much powder you have behind it, you know, what calibers it is that you're actually running, the case length of the projectile and cartridge that you're actually running. Like, there's a lot of factors, but as a general rule, your lighter weight, smaller projectiles will be able to travel farther than your heavier projectiles. Your heavy projectiles are definitely going to drop like a rock at further distances than a lighter projectile of the same cartridge class. That's what we're going to say here. It's the same cartridge class. Your heavy projectile is definitely going to be affected by wind a lot more. This right here is more so things that, you know, are taking place if you're shooting at further distances, but they're going to be affected by wind a lot more than your lighter, smaller bullets, literally just because your heavier bullets have a larger surface area than your smaller bullets. It's pretty simple to think about. If you had, oh, I don't know, a pencil, and you were like, if you had your hand or arm out of a window of your car while you're traveling with a pencil in your hand, you'll feel the air resistance on that pencil. And if you were to take a 2x4 and hold it out of the window as well, that 2x4 is going to push a lot more from that wind than that pencil is. Same concept applies with the size of the bullets. Typically, your much longer range rounds, people are starting to move more towards 6mm, 6.5mm cartridges versus like your 7.62, 7.92mm cartridges that, you know, Grandpa used way back in the day. I mean, they're still very much used nowadays, don't get me wrong on that, but new technology and new fundamentals have really begun to show just how dramatic of a difference it is firing these smaller projectiles at long range, and how much smaller the impact wind has on said projectiles than a larger bullet. Now, that larger bullet, if and when it hits target, is going to have way more power than your smaller projectile. Like if I were to take this 5.56 and fire it out at 1,000 yards, then it would probably hit its target. There's people out there who could definitely pull off a 5.56 at 1,000 rounds, but it's not going to have much energy left. It's going to have slowed down quite significantly. Take a shot every time I wave the round around like this. But it's going to have slowed down quite significantly as it travels through the air, and whenever it hits its target, it's just not going to have as much stopping power as it would have if it maintained its velocity at a closer range. Versus something with a 30 caliber round, we're not going to use the 7.62 by 39 as an example here, just because if it's a inability to really touch out at those distances effectively, I'm going to use the term effectively because somebody somewhere is going to say, I shot 3,000 yards away with a 7.62 by 39 and got all rounds in a dime-sized group on target, on a moving target that was on a truck doing 80 miles an hour. There's always going to be people out there like that. But a 30 caliber round, let's see, what do I have around here? I got a 7.62 by 51 right here. A 30 caliber round, whenever it hits at 1,000 yards, it's a much heavier bullet. It's going to have way more energy delivered on target because the round depends on the weight of the bullet versus the velocity. I mean, they're both very important, don't get me wrong, but it relies much more heavily on the weight of the bullet versus the velocity of it traveling downrange. The concept has been around for a long time and has been popularly debated all over the place. Your lighter bullets that are traveling faster are typically going to have less recoil than a heavier bullet. So if you're just looking for something that has less recoil, go with a lighter weight bullet versus a heavier bullet. Now, it's not just the weight of the bullets that, what is that? Get off of me, you. It's not just the weight of the bullet that really dictates the capabilities of the bullet. It's also the type of the bullet. If you hit something with a full metal jacket, it's going to penetrate way better than if you hit something with a hollow point. Vice versa. You hit something with a hollow point, it's going to transfer way more energy on target in a way shorter distance, which is what slows it down. And it's not going to travel as far as a full metal jacket, but you'll transfer way more energy onto target. Well, hollow point, soft point, bullets that are designed to expand and tumble and do as much damage in as short of a time as possible. Don't go thinking that the weight of the bullet is like 100% the determining factor of what it is that you're going to do. A lot of these newer shooters that are asking me about bullet weights and whatnot, they're not going to be running anything, you know, past 100 yards, or they're just looking for something for basic defense. They're looking for handguns. They're, you know, asking, you know, hey, should I go 45 or 9mm? Depends on the gun that you got, depends on what it is that you want. Do you want something that has a lot of recoil or very little recoil? Do you want something that has, you know, the capability of being suppressed really easily? Your slower moving rounds are easier to suppress, and that's why the heavier rounds are better to use than the lighter rounds, because if you have a lighter round, slower moving projectile, you know, below the speed of sound, which is ideal for suppression, for obvious reason, you don't get the crack of the sound barrier. You're going to have way less energy on target than you will have with a heavier bullet traveling at the same velocity. 45 is definitely easier to suppress than 9mm. 9mm can be suppressed, but like I said, you're going to lose a lot of energy transfer downrange. It all depends on what it is that you're wanting and what it is that you're looking to do. Like, if you are wanting to get yourself a 1911, I recommend going with like the 2011 style, which is, you know, still very much a 1911 style of handgun, but rocking double stack 9mm, you get a lot of capacity. Get yourself one that's rated for like +P+ ammunition, so you can go ahead and run some pretty hot smoking loads through that thing, and it will serve you well. You'll be able to deliver as much damage down on target as you will with a 45. You're probably going to have less recoil depending on the ammunition that you use and depending on the firearm. There's a lot of factors that play into that, but generally speaking, 9mm is going to have less of a recoil than a 45. Or if you want a 45, like I said, if you're looking to get yourself a handgun that is viable for suppression, or you want to use like hollow points that will expand to a tremendously large radius, then 45 would definitely be a good way to go. Or if you want just a classic 1911, for reasons unknown to me. I mean, I have a classic 1911 A1 just because I wanted one, and hey, I have one. Why not? Alright, well, ladies and gentlemen, thanks for watching. Subscribe to the channel, like the video. I'm sure a lot of you are going to tell me all sorts of different things down below. Let me know what y'all's thoughts are. I don't even have to say that at this point. Somebody somewhere is going to tell me what they think, whether or not it's good, bad, ugly, indifferent. Comment section is open, you know, let me have it, I guess. What I say, subscribe, like, description down below has a link to all sorts of different things. Go ahead and go check that out. That being said, I have some food on the stove that I'm really hoping is not burning. So I'm gonna go handle that. You guys go off, have yourself a fantastic day. Before I do that, I'm gonna make a little shooting montage, some B-roll footage, so I can go ahead and splice that in to this video, make it a little bit more interesting and fun to watch. All right, you folks go off, have yourself a fantastic day.
Been a little while since I've done this. Bonnie and Clyde be damned. The poor man's Garen. It's a shame that bolt-action shotguns aren't more mainstream.